Onto this one, ending the year positively, the BankservAfrica Economic Transactions Index for December last year improved despite the ongoing dismal economic context. Now, after 6 consecutive months of decline, there was some growth in the month. On an annual basis, we saw the BETI increasing by 1.7%. The monthly, quarterly and annual improvements all signal some kind of improvement in the broader economy. Independent economist Elize Kruger joins me now to talk about this further. A very good evening to you and thank you for joining us. Perhaps if you could start by sharing with us some of the reasons that we're seeing that apparently South Africa's economy is more resilient than we would have initially thought with the inflation headwinds, the power cuts, and the list goes on, Elize.
Yes, indeed, Refiwe. We were surprised with a good outcome on the BETI for December. I think it's been driven by 2 factors mainly. On the one hand, we've seen quite an increase in the number of transactions, 11.4% on an annual basis. I think part of that has definitely been the festive season, given that these numbers are looking at December, and also overall a bit of a trend towards electronic payments as opposed to cash. So we can see that that trend has been building during the course of 2022 with quite a nifty increase in December. On top of that, I want to just mention that the BETI, as it's measured, is in real terms. So the fact that inflation has been moderating in the last couple of months from the highest point in July has also impacted on the calculation, i.e. when you strip out your CPI numbers, the fact that it's now lower has given a bit of a push in the right direction for the BETI.
So we also saw this reflected in the different indices that measure purchasing power of suppliers and manufacturers. And I'm talking here specifically about perhaps the ABSA purchases index, that also mirroring what we saw in what you've just described. But with all of this, the headwinds that I did mention in my intro, Elize, are we going to continue to see this kind of trend, or do you anticipate there might be a tapering down?
It's a hesitant yes that we might see another month or so going, further improvement in the BETI, partly due to the fact that, as I mentioned, the inflation story has been turning. So that's one of the very little positive news that we are currently seeing in the South African economy, at least, is that we're seeing a moderation in our inflation picture. So for headline inflation, we're moving into a scenario where we might be below 7% in January, and that filters into the calculation of the BETI, which will improve it in real terms. We've had that notable drop in our fuel prices early Jan, which is driving our inflation picture, both CPI and PPI, lower. So that will filter through as a positive on the BETI. But the broader context, as you mentioned, remain quite grim. I mean, we're talking load shedding every day, and it's a number of factors that continue to be obstacles for the economic growth environment. So it will be a minor further improvement if I had to look forward to January, depending on how inflation pans out. But the broad economic environment remains challenging for South Africa.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, I did mention earlier on that Eskom has asked for about a 32% increase in its price that it's allowed to charge for electricity. Sure, NERSA is not going to grant them that exact number, but surely increases of this nature do put pressure not only on consumers, but on the broader economy as well as businesses. And I just wonder how they're going to be navigating all of this with the higher inflation and some of the other pressures that you just mentioned in your last answer.
Absolutely. This will be another nail in the coffin, I want to say, for the South African economy. However, one will have to think of this in a bit of a broader context, in the sense, obviously, if you're a user of electricity or a customer of Eskom, you would feel that it's not justified to get such a big increase. But if you're Eskom and you're struggling to keep your head above water, not being able to pay for the diesel to keep lights on, there will have to be income coming from somewhere. And I think, we'll have to get a balance between a tariff increase and perhaps the taxpayer helping Eskom via a state bailout. So there's going to have to be further, income streams for Eskom to keep the lights on. And I think, unfortunately, the user will have to contribute as well. But yes, I do not think they're going to give us a full 32%, although perhaps as a side note, quite a bit of the increase I asked for is coming from previous financial years regulatory clearing account balances, which have in some cases in court cases been given to Eskom already, meaning NERSA will have to implement some refunds relating to previous financial years in this decision, and therefore it will be a hectic increase. However, most probably not as high as they ask for.
Thank you always for those interesting insights. That is independent economist Elize Kruger joining us this evening to unpack the BT index for December, the transactions that happened in the period showing some positivity.